Welcome to the latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas, and tonight, the January 6th Select Committee, and I want to introduce our guest tonight. Hello, Judy. Welcome, Samantha. Marilee, welcome to the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner.
There were boots on the ground.
Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution states, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such a disability. The only talking head I ever hear citing this text, this Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, is me. In all fairness, North Carolina Republican Representative Madison Cawthorn is being sued by a group of voters in his district, citing this amendment as the reason he should be declared ineligible to run for re-election. And Harry Littman, an attorney on CNN and MSNBC, did write an op-ed in the New York Times about Cawthorn. But what about all the other insurrectionists holding state and federal office? This is why I hate lawyers. Is the Constitution not the supreme law of the land? Does this language not specifically state that the likes of Donald Trump, Mo Brooks, Jim Jordan, Louis Gohmert et al. Are ineligible to hold any state or federal office? Why do we even have a Constitution if nobody ever takes the time to read it, much less follow its directives? Judy, now doggone it, this is what pisses me off. So
I see that. I'm not
so
taking
you have a chance to calm me down. You have a chance to calm me down with your impeccable logic. So give it to me.
I'm almost lost there. I'm not taking all that personally, Paul, by the way. Who's going to decide? And what is the mechanism for removing people from Congress? And there is a discussion of this going on. Can that be done by a majority vote in Congress? And do we really want that to be the way it's done once the Republicans control Congress? The January 6th committee is charged with examining what happens and making recommendations that would prevent this from happening in the future. And it seems to me that this is one of those gaps. We do have this constitutional provision. There's also a statute. So if you were convicted, the statute actually says you can't serve. You know, we haven't had to face this before, except I think once with some socialists from Milwaukee. There's no mechanism laid out anywhere on how to do this. Does Congress get to just vote? Does it require a court intervention? Does it require a conviction? Who's going to decide? So there needs to be a mechanism laid out in case this should happen again.
So this section of the Constitution is kind of like pie in the sky until we have a streamlined method of enforcing it, which what you're saying is we don't have yet.
I don't think we have it. And I don't think that's unusual for constitutional provisions. You know, the 14th Amendment also calls for the equal protection of the laws. And
that ain't happening.
Well, that's not happening. But there is in the statutes now, there are statutes that bring a lawsuit to attempt to get equal protection of the laws. Section 1983, 42 U.S. Code 1983 is used over and over again to enforce that aspect of the 14th Amendment. But as far as I know, and as far as even Lawrence Tribe seems to know, there is no mechanism for enforcing this provision.
So what we really need to have happen then, in order for this provision to be implemented, is for Congress and the president to sign such a statute.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mary Lee, what am I like off the rails here by being pissed off about the 14th Amendment not being enforced here?
That I'm able to make, that kind of a judgment. I think it really is, legal interpretation, but I don't know that I'd protest if they rounded them all up.
So you think
on that one? The fact that I still have them serving in the public eye is very frustrating. But it seems to me it would probably take a DOJ conviction. It does that before you could actually bring that to bear. Because we're here calling it a coup, and they're calling it political discourse. So
right.
All that has to be ferreted out.
So we're disagreeing over semantics here of what actually occurred that day. And that in itself is enough, gives them enough legal wiggle room to avoid this Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, I understand some of the cases, some of them are arguing, the defendants are arguing that it wasn't an official proceeding that they were trying to disrupt.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That keeps getting thrown out, but they try everything. So ironclad, everything has to be ironclad, but I'm kind of with you in terms of the anger element there, Paul.
Okay.
I think another thing is there are other qualifications, of course, if we're thinking of, say, age requirements and residency requirements. Those things sort of ironic, for the age requirement or the residency requirement, you just have to show your birth certificate. Where have we heard that before? But this is, as Mary Lee was saying, is so much squishier as to, it would require proof that this, and convincing people that this actually was a coup. It wasn't legitimate political discourse.
So, Sam, how do you weigh in on my anger about the Section 3? Mary Lee's like me, pissed off.
Right, yeah, and it's justifiable anger, of course, but much like Judy was saying, there is no precedent for this, because who in their right minds would have thought this would happen in a constitutional republic with democratic voting protocol? Who would have thought that we, as simple Americans sitting home that day, would turn on your TV and see something that looked like it came out of 1982, Nicaragua, one of the Central American states back then. It needs to be proven, first of all, and you said you hate lawyers, Paul, but it's going to take some pretty good lawyers to interpret this constitutional law for us, this particular statute. And I don't know with the way it's worded how you would see it any other way, but again, people are slippery, and we know that. I do believe that the architects of this insurrection can hide behind a great deal of things, money, deniability, smoke screens, and even the wording in our own Constitution, they can hide behind it. And it will take a very adept lawyer or series of lawyers to interpret this.
Well, most of the statutes that Judy and Mary Lee alluded to do have as a penalty the ineligibility to run for office after that.
Right.
So, and if you're a convicted felon, you're also ineligible.
Right.
So that would so I guess that's what's required here. All right. Congress can't arrest criminals who break the law. That responsibility falls under the executive branch. The committee's work is getting a lot of attention by exposing many intricate details related to the planning of Trump's attempt to overturn the will of the electorate. But holding the perpetrators accountable has to be done by the Department of Justice. How do you understand the relationship between the Select Committee's investigation and Garland's DOJ in holding the criminal perpetrators responsible for the crimes they have continued, and I'm going to refer to Trump here, continued to commit? every time he gets in front of a rally and he says this election was rigged, he's continuing to commit the crime of insurrection, in my mind. So I think, Marilee, you're the one who cited that there was a lot of DOJ material that was issued to the select committee. Was it you or Sam that said that?
It was something I read in CNN.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was you. Okay. So how do you see the relationship between the Department of Justice and the select committee in holding these people accountable?
I mean, I do understand the select committee's role is to understand exactly what went on and how to prevent this in the future and how to buttonhole our laws and to prevent anything in the future. And the DOJ is to criminally prosecute those who are responsible for the events, the day of and everything leading up to it. But there's also that interrelationship. Doesn't the DOJ also have to enforce the subpoenas that, like, Mark Meadows and Steve Bannon are?
Well, they did to Steve Bannon. They did send an indictment to Steve Bannon. It was a grand jury that issued the indictment of criminal contempt for Steve Bannon, but they haven't acted on the Mark Meadows one yet. And that's the one for Steve Bannon is the only one that they've issued so far. So that is, as far as I can see, the only instance of cooperation between the select committee. And I don't know how long it took. It was like within it was less than 2 weeks where they did that indictment of Bannon. So he moved relatively quickly on that, which a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief, showing that he was involved. But I don't know. So that's all I've seen so far.
Well, I mean, to me, I think they really do need to enforce those subpoenas, and I think it should be done more relatively quickly. I don't understand why that would be a delay factor. I don't understand that part of the law. But for the committee to be effective, on the other hand, I've heard Representative Jamie Raskin say that it's okay, everybody's talking. And if they don't want to tell their side of the story, it doesn't matter, because there's a lot of people very close to it that know everything they've done. So
they're getting enough outside these subpoenas. But still, if you're
possible, I still feel that people of that caliber really need to be held. Hold their feet to the fire for something like that. It's just again, it's defying the rule of law, and we've had 4 years of that. It's just objectionable on all fronts to me. Everybody's always trooped and stood in front of Congress and said their piece for hours on end. And for these people to think that they are above it is just reprehensible. So I would like to see more from the DOJ on that.
Okay, I'd like to see a lot more too. Sam, have you seen enough from the DOJ?
Alluding back to an earlier question, I think Marilee said it. I think Merrick Garland is meticulous, I think was the word used, which I think is a correct word. He comes across that way. Certainly, watching his presser a few weeks ago, that seemed to be how he is as an attorney. I think that the DOJ is going to have to move at the pace that the committee moves when it comes to the subpoenas and the request for information. Obviously, it's only when those subpoenas are received and there's probable cause, then the DOJ can act. And as I see it, yeah, it's going to be slow moving. I see Merrick Garland as somebody who likes his ducks in a row, and he likes, my opinion, I think he likes the give and win. I don't think he wants to rush into something without knowing that the win is on his side.
Okay, Judy, how do you see this relationship playing out with the Select Committee and the Department of Justice?
I think the only thing the Select Committee can actually sort of require the DOJ to do is to enforce subpoenas. But, and their main, as Marilee said, their main mission is to figure out what happened and to make recommendations about how to prevent it in the future. At the same time, though, as I understand it, evidence they uncover can be handed over to the DOJ to aid in their own prosecutions. So I think that's about, as far as prosecutions go, that's about all the committee can do. But I mean, good grief, how much information has it uncovered? And at the same time, the FBI and other agencies have been investigating. So there has to be a monumental amount of evidence out there to support convictions.
They tortured me. They beat me. I was struck with a taser device at the base of my skull numerous times. And they continued to do so until I yelled out that I have kids. But at that point, I was unconscious.
Mike, stay in there, buddy. Mike, it's Jimmy. I'm here. Mike.
For the first time, I was more afraid to work at the Capitol than my entire deployment to Iraq.
One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This nigger voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo, fucking nigger." No one had ever called me a nigger while wearing the uniform of a Capitol Police officer.
This committee, in its body of work, what would you like to see us do?
If a hitman is hired and he kills somebody, the hitman goes to jail. But not only does the hitman go to jail, but the person who hired them does. There was an attack carried out on January 6th, and a hitman sent them. I want you to get to the bottom of that.
And I thought the first public session with the 4 cops had a very strong emotional impact on those that were paying attention. How important do you feel these public hearings will be in the committee's effort to accomplish its stated mission? Now, they're talking now about late spring being whenever these public hearings are going to occur. But how do you feel, Judy, that these public hearings are going to affect their ability to accomplish what they set out to do?
It's sort of an issue of how many people pay attention. Some of us, Marilee, I think, will be paying very close attention to what happens. I think that the people that pay at least that much attention will be affected by the public hearings. I'm just not sure how many people that is.
Sam, do you think that the public hearings are going to have a big effect on this?
I do think they're important. I think they're extremely important. It will keep the feeling that, as Judy put it, the people who are watching, it will keep this alive. And coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak, from eyewitnesses, from people there, it does keep it alive. It keeps it interesting, and it keeps it real. As more time goes by, we grow forgetful, especially, if you're drinking from the fire hose of political pundits on television and the internet. Get some people up there for us to hear and listen to that have firsthand account of what happened that day, and the terror and the fear and the shock of it all. And I think it will be very compelling.
So do you have any names in mind of people that you would like to see give testimony in public?
Oh boy, I know who I'd love to see. I'd love to see Pence get up there and give some testimony.
Pence's my guy too.
I'd love to hear about how he was ushered out in fear. AOC already gave hers, really, and I thought she did a very touching job of that. And I liked how she disseminated that information on Instagram. Younger people did see that. And I think they got a lot of their information from something like that. But yeah, I'd love to see Pence.
Okay, Marilee, more public hearings. How important do you think they're going to be as far as this overall outcome?
I think they're extremely important, and I can't wait until they start doing them. I wish they've had some all along. But by the same token, I am a little jaded. I mean, you look back on Alexander Vindman or Fiona Hill, and when they did their public testimony, and they were so incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And what became of them? So, by the same token, there is so much obfuscation coming from the GOP. There's so much misinformation. They disregard it. They whitewash it. You name it. I mean, I don't know how many synonyms there are for what they do with the truth. And it's kind of a tragedy. So
with these public hearings, though, I mean, the GOP might end up eating a lot of crow as they see this thing unfold. I know the misinformation is going to continue to come out of Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax, but I'm talking about basically the American people.
I really think people already drawn their lines. I don't know that you're going to change the minds of that many people. So 80 million of us knew what we were doing in November, but 74 million, I don't think are going to change our minds. I'm not that convinced. I think it needs to be done. I think it's a record for history. How we treat that going forward is up to the historians. For the American public, I'm not sure. I think we've really drawn some very significant battle lines.
And yet you called this a terror attack when by no definition was it a terror attack. That's a lie. You told that lie on purpose, and I'm wondering why you did.
The way I phrased things yesterday, it was sloppy and it was frankly dumb. And
I don't buy that. Whoa. I don't buy that. Look, I've known you a long time, since before you went to the Senate. You were a Supreme Court contender. You take words as seriously as any man who's ever served in the Senate. And every word you repeated that phrase. I do not believe that you used that accidentally. I just don't.
So, Tucker, as a result of my sloppy phrasing, it's caused a lot of people to misunderstand what I meant. Let me tell you what I meant to say. What I was referring to.
Hey, have you all seen Ted Cruz grovel in front of Tucker Carlson after he called the January 6th rioters terrorists? What was your reaction to that craven display of cowardice, Sam?
Well, I would have been deeply disturbed if I held the man with any integrity whatsoever, but it was par for course. I do find capitulation to any fictional pundit to be incredibly disheartening in an elected official. I mean, people elected this man to their public office, and he capitulated, man. He all but bent over for Carlson, and I'm just sitting there. Yeah, I've watched that. It was so disheartening. I find it particularly interesting that he will still do this to Carlson, even after Carlson was proven in a court of law in this country to be, as Fox News had to state it, a fictional infotainment TV pundit. That was in the lawsuit with Fox News versus Dominion voting systems. Even after that, and that was public information. Here's Ted Cruz. I mean, it just goes to show how much power certain people in this country of a certain type of thinking give someone like Carson. It's disheartening.
So, Marilee, how did you take that Ted Cruz display on the Tucker Carlson show?
I like that fictional pundit. It's Ted Cruz. It's sad. It's just a very sad human being. He'd be better off in taking another vacation.
Yeah. So you weren't surprised at all to see it?
No, I mean, he didn't even defend his wife.
Right.
No, I just don't. I mean, that's just not a man of any character. It's only itself. His groveling is just really pathetic. But I don't know what he thinks he gains from this. I'm not really sure what you gain from behaving like that as a senator. It's just beyond the pale for me. I can't.
I think he thinks he needs it to get the Trump base in Texas to stay behind him, I guess. Judy, Ted Cruz, you surprised at all? Sam and Marilee aren't surprised.
It's par for the course for him. I guess the only surprising thing is that there are enough people to re-elect that man or to elect that man. I just find him just repulsive on so many levels that it's hard for me to understand how he's electable.
The House already impeached Trump twice. But each time the Senate failed to achieve the 67 votes, 2/3 needed to convict. From an historical perspective, how do you see the outcome of the committee's work in terms of saving this republic from descending into a fascist authoritarian dictatorship? There was a recent article, I think, Sam, you were reading the Atlantic. You get your news from the Atlantic. Barton Gellman just penned an article, a pretty long article, about how we are really in danger here.
Yeah. I think the committee was necessarily formed. You can't have this coup d'etat, attempted coup d'etat, and not answer it in some way. But the quote that's continuously running through my mind, even during our conversation here, ironically comes from a conservative, David Frum, who was George W.'s speechwriter.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and I hope I don't flub this, he said, when conservatives realize they cannot win democratically, they will not abandon conservatism. They will abandon democracy. And I just find that to be the most glaring truism in all of this that's coming out. The committee was necessary. Of course, you must answer the seditious act in some way. You have to fight it in some way. But if you have a whole party of people who will abandon democracy in order to win, are you going to hold back that tide with a committee? I would like to think that it can help. The committee has shown some glaring weaknesses in our democracy. The fact that they're attempting to pass, I'm not sure the correct wording here, Judy would know better than me.
The electoral count?
Correct, yes. Yeah. The fact that they're trying to, that to me is so demoralizing that we even have to state this. And it comes out of this directly, out of this coup directly. And what you realize then is the Constitution is so important in helping us keep our democracy, but so is the integrity of our elected individuals. Pence coming out at the 11th hour, I mean, so late, and saying that, Trump was wrong to believe that he could overturn the election. Why would that man wait that long? He waited so long
over a year.
They had a gallows hanging for that man. What kind of integrity does this man have? That without that integrity, a constitution is just really a piece of paper. So I do believe the committee was necessary. And I think it should be heralded as part of the beauty of our democracy, that we do try to fight for it, that we do try to continue this ideal. It is paramount to support the voting protocols of this country, the democratic voting protocols. I guess I'm a mixed bag on that question. I'm not sure where it stands with the committee.
Okay, not totally optimistic about.
Not totally.
Yeah. Okay. Judy.
I do think if we are saved from fascism, the committee should get some credit. If we are not, maybe history will say they tried their best. But, it's so hard to really comprehend how serious this was and what a big job it is to overcome those forces that are out there, apparently. Other than the Department of Justice, what else is going to save us?
How about the voters?
Well, that would be great. But the voters could be influenced by the committee, but then we're back to where we were before. Who's listening? Who's going to change their minds?
Marilee, how much faith are you putting in this committee to keep our democracy alive?
All of it.
You think this is our last gasp then? Huh?
We don't have a real good perspective of recent history that people will really put everything behind it. I mean, he did lose. We have to look at that. I mean, he lost in the election. A lot of people saw him for who he was. But there is this grounded cult that will always be threatening our democracy unwittingly, because they do think that that's what they're standing for. So the juxtaposition of the two, is irrational, I guess is the word I'm looking for, when you think everybody thinks they're saving their democracy.
Well, one of the talking heads on MSNBC, Matthew Dowd, says this. Says the only way that we can really make this thing work is to make the Republicans pay election after election, to really, beat their asses to a pulp, and if they keep getting beat time and time again, they'll finally get the picture that they can't go this way. So I want to pat myself on the back for putting together such a fabulous panel for this particular episode of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. So I want to thank Judy, Samantha, Meryl Lee. You guys were great. All you out there in Cyberland, thanks for listening. Bye.